ದಲಿತ ಚಳವಳಿ ಮತ್ತು ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಸ್ಟ್ ಚಳವಳಿಗಳ ನಡುವಿನ ಸೇತುವೆಯಂತೆ ಆರ್.ಬಿ. ಮೋರೆ ಇದ್ದರು ಎಂದು ಅಖಿಲ ಭಾರತ ಕಿಸಾನ್ ಸಭಾ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷ ಅಶೋಕ್ ಧವಳೆ ತಿಳಿಸಿದರು. ಆರ್.ಬಿ. ಮೋರೆ ಮೊದಲ ದಲಿತ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಸ್ಟ್. ಅವರ ಸ್ವಚರಿತ್ರೆ ಮತ್ತು ಜೀವನ ಚರಿತ್ರೆಯ ಕನ್ನಡ ಅನುವಾದ ಕೃತಿ ಬಿಡುಗಡೆ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂಬೇಡ್ಕರ್, ಮೋರೆ ಮತ್ತು ಇಂದಿನ ಸಮರಶೀಲ ಚಳವಳಿ ಸವಾಲುಗಳು ಸಾಧ್ಯತೆಗಳು ವಿಚಾರ ಸಂಕಿರಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಶನಿವಾರ ಅವರು ಮಾತನಾಡಿದರು.
I am extremely happy that a Kannada edition of the autobiography and biography of Comrade R.B. More, who was one of the very important bridges between the Dalit movement and the communist movement. Directly so in Maharashtra, but actually if you see in a sense, also all over India, a very important symbol. And this Kannada edition is being brought out by Kriya Madhyama. I want to congratulate very wholeheartedly Kriya Madhyama for having published this Kannada edition of the book, which was originally, as all of you know, originally published in English by Leftward Books, and even before that in Marathi by our Paryay publication in Mumbai. Comrade R.B. More was indeed, as you know, one of the main organizers of the Saudar Lake Satyagraha in Mahad, Raigad district of Maharashtra. This was on the 19th and 20th of March 1927, when naturally this Satyagraha was led by a very iconic leader of the Dalit movement. But I don't want to limit him to a leader of the Dalit movement. Right in the beginning, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was a leader of India in the real sense. As all of us know, he was the main architect of the Constitution of India, because he was the chairman of the drafting committee of the Indian Constitution. And that is why actually this was the very first public agitation led under Dr. Ambedkar's leadership anywhere in India, and it was on a very significant question. It was on the significant and very elementary question of having the right to drink water from a common reservoir for Dalits and also for the other castes. This is a very elementary right, which at that time, 1927, the Dalits had been denied. And this is the extremely reactionary situation which was prevailing in our country, not just for a few years, but for a full 2000 years in India, dating back to the Manusmriti, which all of us know. The Manusmriti was the basic fountainhead of social reaction in India. A book written more than 2000 years ago. We'll come to that a little later. Now this fundamental agitation for drinking water from a common reservoir, it was this that was actually very much on the anvil in the Mahad Satyagraha. It's called Mahad Satyagraha, led by Dr. Ambedkar and mainly organized by R.B. More. R.B. More was not a communist at that time. When this happened, he was a follower of Dr. Ambedkar. He was a rebel against the caste system, against the Varna system. And that is precisely why he took the leadership in organizing that satyagraha. Because Mahad was very close to his village, where he grew up, that is Dasgaon. Very close to that Mahad Tehsil and near the town itself. That is why naturally he could mobilize Dalits to a large extent, because it was a very burning issue for Dalits, a question of their self-respect, a question of their fundamental right. A few months after this, 19th and 20th of March 1927, another extremely historic event took place in the same town of Mahad. Mahad is a very beautiful spot in Raigad district, that is a little south of Mumbai. Little south of Mumbai. And that event was on the 25th of December 1927, again under the leadership of Dr. Ambedkar, again with the very important participation of Comrade R.B. More. Thousands of people gathered and they made a public bonfire of this Manusmriti Granth which I told you about. And it is the first known example in India of the Manusmriti being publicly burnt. First known example. I don't know whether there are some others, but what is definitely known, 25th of December was the day Dr. Ambedkar took the lead. Thousands of people were there. Very interesting to note that both the Mahad Satyagraha for water and the burning of the Manusmriti, again both in Mahad, in March and December, although a majority were certainly Dalits, but there were also upper caste people in both those events. Upper caste people were also there. Some Brahmins were also there. Some other forward castes were also there. Other backward castes were also there. Apart from, of course, a preponderant of which were Dalits. Which is a very good thing. Because after all, the annihilation of caste, about which Dr. Ambedkar has written a complete book, the annihilation of caste can only be achieved by all the castes and other communities coming together. One caste cannot achieve it. Unless all the castes are joined together, only then can such a very important thing actually take place. So this is the second major public agitation led by Dr. Ambedkar, which has gone down in history. The third agitation. Now both these were successful. I forgot to say that the Mahad Satyagraha eventually succeeded, although just after the Mahad Satyagraha, there was tremendous repression by the upper castes on the Dalits. They were beaten up. There was a lot of repression on them. But eventually, by constant follow-up, eventually the government had to give in and they had to agree for the Chaudhar Lake in Mahad to be made a really public reservoir where the Dalits could also draw water. So that was a successful struggle. Burning of the Manusmriti. Yes, the Manusmriti was burnt in spite of resistance, etc. So that was also in a way a successful struggle. The third struggle, led by Dr. Ambedkar, was not a successful struggle. And what was that struggle? That was the struggle in 1930, which is called, that was in Nasik city, and that is for temple entry into the Kala Ram Mandir of Nasik. This was the third very important agitation, and that demanded that Dalits must be given entry into the Ram temple in Nasik. This satyagraha, one of the main organizers, just as Comrade R.B. More was the main organizer in Mahad, the main organizer of the Nasik Satyagraha for temple entry was another very, very radical Dalit leader. As we know, of course, there is no need to say, R.B. More was himself a Dalit. I think all of us know that. In Nasik, there was another very militant Dalit leader, radical leader, whose name was Karmavir Dada Saheb Gayekwad. He was the other right-hand man of Dr. Ambedkar in Nasik, just as Comrade R.B. More was the right-hand man of Dr. Ambedkar in Mahad. Now this Nasik Satyagraha for temple entry continued for 5 years. For 5 years, from 1930 to 1935. However, in spite of it going on for 5 years, the Brahmins did not relent. The upper castes did not relent. They did not allow the Dalits to gain temple entry into the Kala Ram Mandir at Nasik. And this was an extremely frustrating experience for Dr. Ambedkar. And the result of it was, as all of us are aware, at the end of that struggle, which had to be taken back, how long could it continue like this? So after 5 years it was withdrawn because it was not successful. At the end of it, Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar made a speech in a town called Yeola, which is also in Nasik district, where he made that very famous declaration. And many of you must be aware of that. And what was that declaration? He said that by the destiny of fate, I am paraphrasing it a bit, I have been born into the Hindu religion. What did Dr. Ambedkar say in that speech? Yeola. He said, by circumstances, I have been born in the Hindu religion. That is true. However, I shall not die in the Hindu religion. This is what Dr. Ambedkar said in Yeola. And what is the background? What is the background to that speech? The background to that speech is that the upper castes did not allow even such a simple thing like a temple entry into the temple at Nasik for 5 years. So you see, all these examples, they must have had a searing influence on Dr. Ambedkar's upbringing. Certainly, no doubt about it. There was a time at that time, all of us are aware, when earlier, of course, Dalit students were not allowed education at all. Then somehow or the other, some concessions were made, but they were made to sit separately. They were made to sit outside the main classroom. They could not sit leave alone mixing with the other boys and girls. Girls, I don't think a single Dalit also was allowed to do, but at least some boys. They could not even sit along with the other boys in the school. So in every way, there was caste discrimination, and this is what Dr. Ambedkar had to face all his life. Not only him, countless Dalits had to face it at that time. They are having to face it even today in large parts of the country. Although a law to ban and abolish untouchability has been passed, can we make a claim that untouchability has actually been abolished all over India? Can we make bold to make such a claim even today? We cannot. So therefore, especially in the rural areas, where feudalism still rules, or semi-feudalism still rules, this situation is there everywhere. And therefore, this is the background. The radical Dalit movement today, that's the main point that we have to consider. We'll come to that within 5-7 minutes. You see, Comrade R.B. More, around 1930, there was an ideological churning in his mind. He was drawn towards Marxism. He retained a tremendous respect for Dr. Ambedkar till the end of his life. Comrade R.B. More lived up to 11th of May 1972. That is 16 years after the demise of Dr. Ambedkar. You know, Dr. Ambedkar passed away on the 6th of December 1956. That also, very significantly, 1.5 months after he embraced Buddhism, on the 14th of October 1956, Dr. Ambedkar embraced Buddhism in Nagpur along with lakhs of his followers, and so he made true the assertion that he had made in his Yeola speech in 1936, that I am born a Hindu but I will not die a Hindu. He made it come true. Point is, after that, as I said, while retaining his respect for Dr. Ambedkar, and of course for the emancipation movement of the Dalits, of which Dr. Ambedkar was the most powerful symbol, no doubt about it. But Comrade More felt that this had to be combined with another revolutionary philosophy, and that is the philosophy of Marxism. And therefore, in 1930, he joined the Communist Party. Even after joining the Communist Party, he came into the trade union movement. He was very active in the Mumbai trade union movement at that time, which was, as you know, led by the communists. The Girni Kamgar Union, Textile Workers Union, a very, very important thing at that time, led by the communists. Not only that, Comrade R.B. More also took part in the peasant movement. He was one of the leaders of the Kisan movement also. He actually attended the first foundation conference of the All India Kisan Sabha that was held in Lucknow on the 11th of April 1936. And he worked in the Kisan Sabha also, trade union and Kisan Sabha. So these, both the working class and the peasantry, Comrade R.B. More worked. And then, when the Communist Party, of course, right in 1930, in the platform of action that was prepared by the Communist Party at that time, in the very first, can be called as some kind of a program of the Communist Party, 1930, draft platform of action. Right there, the Communist Party had taken cognizance of the caste question. And we had said that this caste question must be taken up by the Communist Party in a very serious manner. Right in 1930, you can see the documents even now. However, later on, there were certain lapses in assessment with particular reference to the assessment of Dr. Ambedkar in the Dalit movement and his place in the Dalit movement, his place in the general democratic movement. When those incorrect formulations were made, it goes to the credit of Comrade R.B. More, who was a leader of the Communist Party, was a member of the Bombay Committee. Later he was elected to the State Committee, Maharashtra State Committee of the party, one of the very respected leaders in Maharashtra. But he wrote letters even to Comrade E.M.S. Nambudripad at that time, 1953, 1957, 61, to the party central leadership, calling for a review of the understanding of the Communist Party regarding caste, regarding Dr. Ambedkar's role. And those letters are still available. I'm sure, I think one appendix must be there in the book also. So therefore, this he said, and they were circulated. Comrade R.B. More's letters were circulated to the entire Central Committee at that time, to the State Committee at that time. There was a discussion, and many of the points were accepted by the party leadership that yes, what Comrade R.B. More is saying is right. That has to be made and integrated into the party line regarding Dr. Ambedkar, regarding Dalits. And naturally, emancipation of Dalits is a very important point, no doubt about it. Liberation of Dalits, and in a most fundamental sense, again that title of the book by Dr. Ambedkar, what we are actually working for is the annihilation of caste. We want the annihilation of Varna, the annihilation of caste, the annihilation of women's subjugation, and the true emancipation of women. And all these are a legacy of the Manusmriti. All of you must be knowing that this entire Varna system, how does it start? The very first reference to it is actually in the Rig Veda, in a verse in the Purush Sukta, that chapter. And all of us are aware of that shloka in the Vedas. What does it say? Brahmins came from the face of God. Kshatriyas came from his arms. Vaishyas came from his thighs. And Shudras came from the feet of God. This is the shloka in Rig Veda, which you understand. There is a lot of controversy, we are not going into that. Whether it was in the original Rig Veda, somebody put it there later on, all that. There is a lot of controversy regarding that. Let's not go into that and waste our time now. But the point is That is the verse which started the Varna system. One point which should be underlined in this point over here is that Dalits do not come within these four Varnas. Many people I know, when I go and address such seminars, many people think that Dalits are the Shudras. Dalits are not Shudras. Who are the Shudras? Ambedkar has written a book. Name, who are the Shudras? You see, in very short, Shudras are those who do manual labor in the fields, in the workshop. There were no factories at that time. But whatever we call, mason, potter, all these small these things were there in the village economy. So anyone who does physical labor, they were called Shudras. So therefore, what were most of the farmers? Farmers were Shudras because they do physical labor. What are the potters? What are the masons? What are the cobblers? What are the barbers? All these are the Shudras. Dalits are actually even beyond and below the Varna system, and that is why you will see Mahatma Jyotirao Phule in all his books, if you see carefully. And Jyotirao Phule is important because Ambedkar considered Jyotirao Phule as one of his gurus. You know that. Jyotirao Phule, Ambedkar considered him as his guru. And he has said, in all his writings, he has used a very, very peculiar word, but a perfectly accurate word to describe all those who are exploited, all those who are oppressed. And the word is Stri Shudrati Shudra. What does it mean? It actually means three words. Stri means women. Ati means most. Stri Shudra, Shudra is Shudra, and Shudrati Shudra means Ati Shudra is also joined. Ati Shudra is the Dalit. Most Shudra means it is the Dalits. That is the actual thing. And that's why he is absolutely accurate in mentioning everywhere. Therefore, Dalits do not form a part of the Varna or Varna system. They are even below that. That's why untouchable. That's why the most menial tasks given to them in the last 2000 years. And that is exactly what, against which Dr. Ambedkar, Comrade R.B. More, Dada Saheb Gaikwad, and many others all over the country have rebelled. And they include also many other social reformers. Periyar Ramaswamy, for example. He has also talked against this Varna system, caste system. Narayan Guru from Kerala. He has also lambasted this. I am sure in Karnataka also they have been. Basava, exactly. Basava. He has rebelled against it. So you see, everywhere you will find that there have been such figures who have rebelled against this Varna and caste system. That is the point. And therefore, that is exactly what we have to combine. There is one more point that I would like to say, and when we come to the Dalit movement and the radicalness of it today. You see, before he became chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution of India, Dr. Ambedkar had written a small book which he presented to the Constituent Assembly. This was before he became chairman of the drafting committee. And that book was called States and Minorities. All of us must read it even today. Historical significance. There, one section, as I told you, I have described, not going into detail. where he said anything to do with the Manusmriti should be thrown out of the new constitution. Caste cannot find a place. Varna cannot find a place. There has to be equality between all caste communities, between the two sexes. Gender equality has to be there. All these were the points he made in the first part, that is the social part of the thing. In the second part of states and minorities, he has talked about the economic angle. I said in our speech there, in our insurance employees thing today morning, but it requires to be repeated here because many people were not there. This is a very important point because that second point, the Ambedkar's views on the economic question in India, are not placed anywhere even by those who call themselves staunch Ambedkarites. It's my criticism. And many of those on the left also don't refer to it because they just don't know about it. What did he say in the economic section of states and minorities? He clearly said, India, in the constitution, it has to be written in black and white that India is and will be made a socialist society. Very clearly he has written. And in his program, he has said, all the major industries must be nationalized. Key industries. All the major financial institutions like insurance, like banks, etc., they also must be nationalized. It's written by Dr. Ambedkar in black and white in the states and minorities. And then he goes even further. Just see the revolutionary nature of Dr. Ambedkar's thinking even at that time. This was sometime in 48, 49. He says, even land should be nationalized. That was the period of the feudal era, total. When big landlords, big money lenders had thousands of acres of land in large parts of India. And at that point of time, Dr. Ambedkar makes a demand, nationalize all the land. A very courageous step to take at that point of time. So therefore, but none of this finds a place in our analysis of Ambedkar. The Dalit movement does not do it. The communist movement is either unaware about it. There is one last thing that I would like to say, then we'll come to the present. Comrade Govind Pansare, you know, who was martyred. Govind Pansare, Narendra Dabholkar, Gauri Lankesh, Professor M.M. Kalburgi, two from Karnataka, two from Maharashtra. Killed by the Sanatan Sanstha. Communal elements. Govind Pansare has quoted a biography of Dada Saheb Gaikwad in his book, and he has said that after the first general election 1952, when the Scheduled Caste Federation did not do well, and where the Communist Party of India, that time it was a undivided party, that stood second after the Congress all over India in the number of members of parliament. Also in the number of MLAs that were elected all over the country. Communist Party was number 2, Congress was number 1, of course, much ahead of the communists. But the point is, Communist Party was number 2. At that time, Dr. Ambedkar has written a letter in his own handwriting to Karmavir Dadasaheb Gaikwad, who, as I know, he told you, was his right hand in the Nasik temple entry Satyagraha. And there Dr. Ambedkar writes that I have become quite disillusioned with the way things are going in the country. Because by then, although the constitution had been passed, although the constitution was in place, however, it was not being implemented in the way that Dr. Ambedkar wanted it to be implemented. Attacks on Dalits were taking place. Attacks on women, especially backward women, were taking place. All this situation. And then he writes that I am really getting disillusioned with the way things are going in India. And our Scheduled Caste Federation also has not done well. I am not sure when my people he writes, he means the Dalits, when will they get justice, if at all? And then he writes a very significant statement. He says, sometimes the thought comes to me that I should join the Communist Party. Dr. Ambedkar writes this sometime in 1954. Sometimes the thought comes that I should join the Communist Party. Now, Dr. Ambedkar was a completely, fully rational human being. The most rational, extremely thoughtful. This could not be a flight of fancy. You understand? After that, he paid a lot of attention to Marxism. He, of course, concentrated on Buddhism also. A very in-depth study of Buddhism. And as you know, that Kathmandu speech of his, he made an analysis of Buddha and Marx. So all these things, of course, there he was critical of Marx also, we should say. We need not try to gloss over the differences, but he was thinking in both terms. Now you see, with this background, if you today come to the Dalit movement, what do we find? We find one negative trend which is today dominant. If you talk about a radical Dalit movement, which is the subject of your seminar today, a radical Dalit movement, we are having a situation where a negative kind of a situation is existing, and that is the dominant trend today. Let me just explain that trend very briefly. You know, one very leading leader of the Republican Party of India was in the cabinet led by the Congress for many years at the center. One can understand that at least. One cannot justify it, but one can at least understand. Today that same individual, that same gentleman, a Dalit leader, is sitting along with BJP RSS ministers in the BJP RSS Union Cabinet. I am talking about Mr. Ramdas Athawale. Let us not mince words. Let us not mince words. It is impossible to believe that anybody who has Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's philosophy at heart can ever go and sit along with BJP RSS people in the same cabinet. This can never happen, but it has happened today. It's not the only example. There are many other examples also. Though not directly, indirectly also certain things have happened. After the Gujarat communal riots of 2002, which were presided over by the current Prime Minister and the then Gujarat Chief Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, in the elections to the Gujarat State Assembly held immediately after those riots, where more than 2,000 innocent Muslims were killed, where women were raped, gang raped, children were burnt alive. All this happened over there. And immediately in the elections after that, BSP leader Mayawati went to Gujarat to campaign for the BJP and Mr. Modi. Can we imagine such a thing happening? A Dalit leader calls herself Ambedkarite, and you go and campaign for the BJP, for Mr. Narendra Modi was the Chief Minister, and you campaign that the BJP should win, who has just a few months ago actually killed 2,000 plus Muslims. And later on also what is happening in UP. I don't need to spell out things for you. Where, for example, we have seen Maharashtra. In the last two elections we have seen that certain people are putting up candidates everywhere to divide the secular vote. So all these things are happening, which you must understand. They are also Republican Party leaders. The radical Dalit movement is also taking root. Everything is not black. The young in the Dalit movement, in many places across India, are coming forward. They are realizing that this cannot be allowed to go on in this way. We cannot maintain the status quo and go along with the BJP, RSS, or even with other capitalist parties, feudal parties for that matter. And we have to have a different identity, a radical identity. Yes, certainly, today with BJP, RSS being the main enemy, some kind of electoral adjustment is necessary. There is no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. The India experiment is a necessary experiment. I am not talking about electoral. But regarding the movement, we must understand that a new Dalit radicalism is growing in several parts of the country, and that Dalit radicalism should aim at getting the blue flags and the red flags together in a common kind of approach, in a common united front, and that is something which is extremely important. This was done first by Dada Saheb Gaikwad in the land struggle in Maharashtra in 1959 and in 1964. Land struggle of Dalits, Adivasis, backward castes, others, where the red flags and blue flags came together in a tremendous big satyagraha in which lakhs went to jail, and to some extent land had to be given to the Dalits, to the Adivasis, to many other sections as a result of those struggles. So we have to see the radical aspect of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the radical aspect of Comrade R.B. More, the radical aspect of Dada Saheb Gaikwad, and many other such radical people are there all over the country today. All this as a big stream and as a big torrent, it has to be taken forward in the days ahead. And with this hope and with this confidence, that yes, it will be taken ahead jointly in the days ahead. I once again congratulate Kriya Madhyam for getting out this Comrade R.B. More's book in Kannada, which will help in getting this process off the ground and getting some more momentum to it also in Karnataka. Already you have this kind of thing in Karnataka. That is exactly why this book was published. I am sure it will give a more bigger boost to these efforts in Karnataka. With these words, thank you very much.